Hello everybody, welcome to our second session for this Eat to Nourish series here at UCSF. I'm Carly Wertheim, the culinary nutrition educator tonight. So we got started on week one talking all about this beautiful rainbow of produce. We wanted to eat the rainbow of fruits and vegetables. And throughout the program, we're going to be building on that idea, but adding in sort of new themes and topics as we go. So just as a quick refresher, what were some of those reasons that we were trying to get as many colors in as possible? I'd love volunteers tonight.
Yeah. The constituents of each fruit and vegetable, or the antioxidants in each fruit and vegetable, polyphenols.
Yes, so polyphenols, which are the phytochemicals. That was our big word of the night. Phytochemicals being our plant chemicals. And by eating this really diverse color spectrum, we get to benefit from the most diverse array of these phytochemicals, which, as you mentioned, are our antioxidants, anti-inflammatory compounds. So just a little bit up here tonight, we've already got lots of colors. We've got a couple different oranges, purples, greens, yellows, and then sort of this new topic that we are adding to the discussion is plant-based proteins, which is one of my favorites to talk about, especially sort of in this climate that we are having these huge debates around climate change, and it's of the essence right now as well. So I get very excited about this class. In no way are we trying to say, like, meat completely off the table, simply giving more options so that if you are trying to decrease your meat consumption, you have ideas and ways to incorporate these foods in a very delicious and, of course, nutritious way. So we're going to be focusing mostly on a group of plant-based proteins called pulses tonight. And pulses are the dried seeds of the legume family. So the legumes are where you have the edible fruit is enclosed in a pod, and then if they're dried, they're a pulse. So pulses are eaten really all around the globe, and they have been for over 10,000 years. I love to start the class by just sort of asking our group, which comes from diverse cultures and backgrounds, what are some ways that you've been familiar with eating pulses? So these are going to be our beans, our lentils, and our peas. So we can start to brainstorm the type of dishes that would be showing up in places all around the globe. And I can get us started. I'm thinking we're going into fall. Nothing makes me happier than having like a 3-bean chili on the stove that's super hearty, full of veggies to enjoy through the week. What else you got for me?
Edamame, sure.
Edamame. And maybe a dish, a meal that would feature these foods. Someone maybe from this table?
You say that a 3-bean chili?
A 3-bean chili would feature our pulses, our beans.
3-bean salad.
3-bean salad, sure. Let's just keep going on the threes. Love it. Yes?
I had salmon with lentils.
So lentils, totally, completely. And to kind of keep us going on this theme, you can imagine really any culture around the world, and there are dishes that they are preparing with these foods. When we travel to India, we have rajma and dal, chana masala, which is our chickpeas. We're going to be using those a lot tonight. If you think about Louisianan cooking, in the South, we're going to have a pot of red beans and rice. Let's see. Moroccan food. What are you thinking? Yeah.
But they have lots of beans too. They have
tons of beans. Lima beans, chickpeas, definitely. And hummus. Can't forget our favorite hummus. And so there's really great reason that these foods are eaten all around the world. And so we're going to be touching on some of those topics tonight through the course of the cooking. And just to get us started, I want us to be thinking about why these foods are so important as we start to make the dishes. So I can start us off again, and then I'd love to keep brainstorming as a group. The first one I'll just throw out there is, of course, they have protein. These are some of our most rich sources of plant-based protein. So if we're trying to decrease our meat consumption, eating these beans, lentils, peas, soy are going to give us that source of this nutrient. Why else might we be wanting to incorporate these foods? Yes.
Fiber.
Fiber, and they're filling. So these kind of go together, right? Our fiber is going to feel more satiating. Fiber is going to help cultivate a diverse gut flora, keep our bowels regulated. Awesome. More ideas. What about flavor and money? Yes, they are very, very economical. So if you're thinking about the cost difference between preparing meats versus comparing beans to even canned beans and these kind of bulk dried ones, we're going to see, a price comparison that can sometimes be like 10 times less expensive. Awesome. More reasons. I touched a little bit at the beginning, our beautiful environment that we live in. These pulses to me are kind of like miracle foods because they actually replete the soil rather than deplete it. Many of them are what's known as nitrogen fixing, which means that they put nitrogen back into the soil rather than take them out. They're often used as like a rotational crop to keep the soil feeling really vital and nourished. And so that to me is this beautiful idea that our food choices can really be a vote for sustainable agriculture as well. And then when it comes to water, these foods are going to take far, far, far less water than animal-based proteins. So as a comparison, I just want to tell you this one. So 1 pound of beef. Any guess how many gallons of water that's going to take?
50.
Oh, friends.
100.
Woo, woo, woo. 1,000, we're getting closer. About 2,000, 1,800, roughly, gallons of water for 1 pound of beef. Okay, chicken. Ready for this one? It's gonna be lower. Any guesses?
Start at 50.
Start at 50, okay, a little up.
Yeah, 500.
Yes, 469 gallons. Compared to, we're finally on to our 1 pound of pulses, these garbanzo beans, 42 gallons. So no comparison that they are going to be far less use of water. I also want to just mention a little bit more about the nutrition content of some of these foods. So in addition to fiber, we see lots of minerals like iron, potassium, magnesium. Lentils are actually going to be the pulse with the highest amount of protein and iron compared to like the different beans. And they're seen a lot in population-based studies in terms of their abilities to lower cardiovascular disease risk, improve blood glucose control, and lower breast and colorectal cancer risk. So there's really no question that there are benefits to adding these foods into our weekly meals, our daily meals, and I'm hoping that tonight will really give you some fun ideas of how you're going to do that. So I'm going to move around into my chef mode here.
And then I just want to add on to all the great things that you said in terms of, yes, last week we talked about eating the rainbow, and all of these pulses actually layer onto that, because if you think of the different colors that you get, in red lentils, black beans, kidney beans, you're going to see all those vibrant dark colors. So you also are getting those phytochemicals in these foods, and when you compare them to animal proteins, you're typically not getting phytochemicals in plant food. So it's just another way to kind of up your intake of those protective compounds.
Thanks for adding that, Greta. All right, so you might see I have a pot of boiling water here. We're gonna get started with our fall lentil salad. So what I have tonight are some black lentils that I have run under running water. So whenever we're starting sort of with these dry lentils and beans, we're always going to want to start by giving them a rinse. And I love a colander like this to do that. We're just going to rinse away any of the debris that might have formed during the processing. So we've got water and lentils. We could just go and cook our pot just like this. But one of the things I'm going to be talking a lot about tonight is how fun it is to cook these foods cook these foods from scratch, because we have the opportunity of adding a lot of extra flavor to the beans and the lentils when we start with them in this pot. So one thing I like to think about are aromatic foods. We have lots of different herbs and spices that we can add into this cooking liquid. So I'm thinking we're gonna do these bay leaves. I'm gonna throw 2 in there. And we are going to add also one of my favorite things, which is just a clove of garlic, really simply. We can take a whole clove or 2 of garlic, take off the skin, and I like to do that just with a little smash. Kind of pop it out of its skin there that way. And we're just gonna put this right into that cooking water. And the garlic kind of perfumes the water and puts that flavor into the lentil. Other things that we could add, let's say if I was cooking a pot of white beans from scratch, I would go out into my garden and see if I had some rosemary growing and throw in a handful of that rosemary or thyme, something like that would be delicious. And you might notice I've kind of torn this garlic apart. And it's totally okay. If it doesn't stay whole, it's very much just going to sort of fall apart and dissolve into that pot of cooking water and get really soft and just add like another delicious flavor in there. And then we also do want to have some salt in our water. About a 1/4 teaspoon is great. And then we're just going to let these do their thing. They take probably about 20 plus minutes. For a salad. For a soup, if we really wanted it to be very soft, we're going to cook our lentils a little bit longer, maybe up to like 24 or 25 minutes. And so I want to direct you all to a handout that you have, which is the How to Cook Beans and Lentils sheet. So grab that. And what we have there are all sorts of cooking times on the back side. You can see that there's different categories for if you're cooking a pot from scratch or in a pot or a pressure cooker. And so you have kind of a gauge on how to get started. We're going to be talking more about the process of how to cook them along the way. But for lentils, we don't need to soak them in advance. We start just with dry into the pot and we're good to go. Kind of trying to keep it at a good simmer. Off it goes. All right. So now what are we going to put in this delicious salad? So we're getting into fall. I'm trying to think of like a fun combination of flavors, again, colors. And so what we're going to do is use this beauty. Anyone know what this is?
Red cabbage.
We used red cabbage last week. It's a great guess, but I did hear it from the group. Radicchio. So how would you describe the flavor of radicchio?
Bitter.
Yes, it is very bitter. And we talked a little bit about bitter last week as a flavor that's not very common in a lot of the average American's diets, and how incredibly beneficial it is. Can be for helping us stimulate our digestion. And so I love to just kind of cut it in half and then very thinly shred this radicchio. So that's going to be in our salad. And then I also love, love, love fennel. And we worked with fennel last week as well. So it's kind of that anise flavor that's going to be slightly sweet and very, very flavorful in this salad, and also a good crunch for texture. So we're really just playing with texture and color so far. For the fennel, it comes like this. So you can imagine that the bulb has been growing underground, and these are the fronds that are going to come up. So we're not going to be using the fronds for the salad tonight, but that doesn't mean that we are just going to compost them or throw them out. We're going to save these guys and put them into another, I'll save them here, stock. They're absolutely wonderful for our stock bag, and we talked about that last week as well. We love free food, right? When we have the ability to use our little bits and scraps to create something new. So we're saving the little bits that are going to be perfect for stock, and fennel is one of them. Other ones for stock could be carrots, celery, onions, garlic. And that stock bag just sort of lives in the freezer until it's full and we're ready to make a big pot. I like to wait until maybe I have a chicken carcass as well, so put the bones in there. And we're just going to do the same thing, a thin shred of this beautiful fennel. Now these lentils are really hearty. I'm actually using a different one that's listed on the recipe. These are the black lapoi lentils rather than the French green, and really they're interchangeable, except for these ones are going to take a little bit longer to cook, and the French ones could take a little bit less. And I'm mentioning that, their hardiness, just because we've been talking a lot about how to set ourselves up for success over the course of the week in terms of food prep. And a lentil salad is going to hold up really well in the fridge for the week. The thing that might get a little soggy in here would be this guy, the radicchio. So I might keep that on the side, mix it only in when I'm ready to eat. Great. So we're just kind of prepping all the things that are going to go into this salad when the lentils are done. And I'm also going to be preparing a vinaigrette. Thank you. So for our vinaigrette tonight, I want you to pull out, you have a little card that says FAST. Yes, that one, exactly. So we have that from the Healing Kitchens Institute and Rebecca Katz's Cancer Fighting Kitchen book, which is a beautiful resource. And we're playing tonight with this idea of flavor balance for our vinaigrette. So our FAST is this acronym that stands for fat, acid, salt, sweet. 4 flavors that when we combine them in this beautiful balance, the right ratio, we get what Rebecca calls yum. Everyone wants a little yum in their life. So it's about learning how to play with those 4 flavors to create yum. And so I'm going to start tonight with this vinaigrette just by kind of working through what those different 4 words represent when it comes to actual cooking. So F is our fat. Fat is mouthfeel. It's what when you put a food in your mouth and it has that that's really just like tastes good in there, mouthfeel, that's our fat. It's helping to spread flavors across the palate. And of course, fat is going to come from our olive oil tonight. Could be another cooking oil. Fat also comes from nuts and seeds, avocados, a nut butter perhaps as well. So just starting off with that, fat as our base, some olive oil. Now A for acid. Acid is the high note. It is that zesty, kind of fun, perky flavor that really lifts and livens a dish. Acid could be citrus. It could be, tonight, vinegar. So we're going to use balsamic vinegar as our acid, about 3 tablespoons into here. And oftentimes when someone tries a dish, they sit down to the table, or they're cooking and they put that first bite in their mouth and they go, oh, that's kind of bland. What do I need? Salt, right? We often reach just straight for the salt. But I'd really suggest playing around with this idea of adding some acid. Sometimes the acid is just what we need to kind of like enliven, like I said, and make it a little bit more fun. So having a little squeeze of lemon available or a little hint of a vinegar as a finishing. And then maybe you need the salt, but just as a way to play and see what comes first. F-A-S-S, so our 2 S's, salt and sweet. Salt tonight is just going to be our beautiful sea salt, and we'll do about 1/4 teaspoon in there. Salt, you can just think of it as turning up the amp. We are dialing up any flavor that's already in the food. It's enlivening it and making the natural flavor of the food just come alive. Naturally salty foods as well, we could use instead of sea salt, things like seaweed could be naturally salty. And then lastly, sweet. We don't need a lot of sweet to create the effect that we're going for. The sweet ingredients that I like are maple syrup or a little bit of honey, and we're really just looking for a drop or so, about 1 teaspoon in this vinaigrette. And the sweetness does a lot. It adds just this beautiful roundness. Sweet is kind of just like bringing it all together into this hug. And so sometimes if a dish feels too sharp, too bitter, too spicy, just a little bit of sweet could be what it needs. A couple more things we want to get into this vinaigrette. We'll do a little bit of balsamic. Dijon. Oh, excuse me. Thank you. Dijon mustard. Yes. We already have our balsamic in there. And we'll give it a whisk. Yeah, that'll do it. So I make my dressing in advance while the lentils are still cooking. And that way, as soon as the lentils are done and we kind of rinse them off, drain them away, we have a bath for them to sit into and marinate. So they're immediately going to start soaking up all of that delicious flavor. So we have almost all of this salad now kind of prepped in advance, except for sort of like the fun tidbits. So I love putting some citrus into a salad. For this, we just want to take off the peel. So cutting around as we go so that we can get the segments of orange in there. We could also use another fruit. We could use apple, would be delicious. Even pear might be really nice. So any questions so far about what we're doing with this lentil salad? What about variations on this theme of a lentil
What
salad?
about horseradish, dandelions, I mean, things that are bitter?
So the question is about other bitter foods. Yes, other bitter foods would be things like dandelion greens, horseradish, arugula, and they're all going to have that same sort of property of that bitter flavor and stimulating digestive system. So yes, most certainly. And we could just do segments like this for our salad, but since we have so many people tonight and I want you all to get that little bite of that orange in there, I am just going to make them a little bit smaller for the sake of our tester and run my knife through it, more like a small dice, medium dice for our salad tonight. Hopefully everyone will get a bite of this lovely citrus orange. So I mentioned other variations of lentil salads that we could do.
I guess put bell pepper in, give me and taste good.
With a bell pepper. Oh, I love that idea. Definitely bell pepper. We could do more of a summer version with seasonal produce. Bell peppers, tomatoes, cucumbers, maybe make it sort of Mediterranean, throw in some Kalamata olives. That would be delicious. And I'm gonna actually just use this one more time, thank you. And then last but not least, our herbs. So we have so many beautiful herbs that we can use in our cooking. And we were talking about phytochemicals last week and continuing through the course. And we said that gram for gram, the herbs and spices are going to have the most concentrated source of these phytochemicals. So we want to get them in whenever we can. And not just like a little bit garnish. You know, parsley is always sort of just thought of as like, oh, let's put a little leaf on top. Oh no, not in our kitchen. So we are gonna use a lot of these tonight. So we have parsley and we have dill. And I love dill, just a little, you don't need too much. It's very, very strong. We're kind of separating the leaves from the stems here, but also not being too picky about it. You know, if you get a little bit of a stem in there, we're gonna chop it up. I'm looking for about 1/4 cup of each of these. And then I wanna show you how I like to cut these sort of, these herbs that end up sort of traversing across the cutting board if we're not careful. Make sure everyone can see here. So with these types of herbs, the way that I suggest cutting them is trying to ball them up, making them as small as you can into your fist, really tight. And the tighter they are, the less you're gonna have to run your knife through them. So I can now just bring our knife up to these herbs and chop my way through them, kind of protecting my fingers with my bear claw. And then I really just need to go once or twice in this extra direction.
And Carly, how do you suggest storing herbs in the refrigerator? Because I feel like they can go bad.
That is such a great question. So I wish I still had it set up the way I brought them here tonight. I take a kitchen towel or a paper towel, and I'm going to just wet it and squeeze out the extra water. I'll do it with what we have left of this dill. And then we're gonna just sort of wrap our herb up into this towel, and we could go do as little as just this and putting it in, or if we had like a leftover bag from our grocery shopping, we could just slip it into that bag. Don't want to shut it all the way, we're gonna leave that bag lightly open. This, I swear, is just such the trick. It's gonna keep the herb looking really fresh, almost like a week and a half, sometimes even 2 weeks, depending on the herb, and not make it kind of like that lifeless, sad creature that we find so commonly.
Awesome. That's a great tip. Thanks.
Are you making it wet first?
I did. So I did make this towel a little bit wet, squeezed out that extra moisture, and that was it. All right, so we've now got all of these delicious components for our salad. We're gonna be adding 2 extra things at the end. I have some toasted walnuts here, chopped toasted walnuts, and some feta cheese crumbles. So we're gonna leave the feta cheese on the side, so if you're preferring not to have dairy at this point in time, you don't have to try that. I find it adds a really nice tanginess. And one note about the feta is, sometimes, let's see, I got the USDA organic salary. So trying to always choose an organic dairy if we have the ability to. So we'll leave these over here. He'll add those separately.
Okay.
Great. So now we can just set our dressing, set all of our fun veggies and herbs aside, and we'll move on to another dish as these lentils keep cooking. And I'll let you clear that out. Thank you, thank you. All right. So next, let's see, what shall we move into? We're gonna make some soup now. So you can all turn to your Tuscan white bean lentil soup. Great, all right, so this is a favorite. I love this one because it comes together really quickly. You're gonna see how fast this is gonna happen, and it just tastes so hearty and nourishing, especially kind of in this fall transitional time and all through winter. So we're gonna start just by cutting all of the veggies that we need for this dish. And it's called a mirepoix, sort of the start, the base of most good soups, some good soups. We don't say all good soups, but many a good soup starts with a mirepoix. And what mirepoix is, it's French, and it's just going to be onion, carrots, and celery. I think I could use a little chop help if you don't mind. I'll start by chopping up this onion, which we just want in a dice. So I chop off the ends, remove the skin, which we could save for our stock pot. Yeah, you guys are catching on. And we're looking for just kind of a small dice. Can be a rough chop. We're not too worried with how it turns out. Any questions? All good? Yeah.
You seem to have taken off the
Oh, one sec right here.
Why 2 different onions?
Why 2 different onions? Just one.
Oh, I thought you had the onion and you have the green onion.
Oh, what we have here is
Celery.
celery.
And how do you want these
So
chopped?
yeah, Greta's gonna start by cutting the celery. We're gonna take off the ends, both sides,
Got it.
and then we're gonna do a small dice for that as well. So
Okay.
we're really just looking for all of our veggie bits to be about the same size for this pot, because similar size cooks similar time.
Okay.
Questions? Yes?
You seem to have cut off in the onion both ends. I mean, not just the skin, but the ends. So you cut off the ends. Why did you cut off the ends?
I did cut off the ends. I cut off the root and the tail of the onion. Sometimes you can leave it all, you could leave the tail together so the onion doesn't quite fall apart, but I was sort of able to use my hand to hold that onion while I was cutting. And a question right here.
Quick difference between white, red, and yellow.
White, red, yellow onions
Yeah.
in terms of
Yeah.
flavor.
Yeah.
You know, it's interesting because I feel like I would want to say sometimes like the red is a little bit stronger and the yellow is lighter, but sometimes you just get a yellow that's super, super sharp or a red that's really mild. Do you know anything about nutrition between the three of them?
I mean, I think, again, it's going to go back to the color.
Yep.
So I think the vitamins are going to be very similar, but when you have a red onion, you're going to get more of those phytochemicals that are in the purple
Have the
family.
anthocyanins.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
I think that would be the main difference.
Question? Why do you peel the carrots rather than just clean the carrots? Because it has all that vitamins and nutrients under the skin, so I just wondered.
It does. So just for this recipe, it was a personal preference. We talked last week about how we could leave peel for fiber or the nutrients if we wanted to. The carrots are just going to get a chopped dice as well, please.
How's the celery looking?
Celery looks beautiful.
Okay.
We got our little pieces here.
Okay.
So now that we've got that set up going, I'm going to turn on our pot so we can get this onion cooking first. Great questions. Thank you for those. I think it's time to check on our lentils and see how they're coming along. So what I'm doing is, first I'm just looking to see. And what I'm looking to see is if they're starting to sort of pop out of their skins and starting to be a little bit more tender and falling apart. And since I am seeing some of that, I'm going to go ahead and try one out. Beautiful. So they're nice and soft. I'm actually looking for the lentil to almost be more soft than I would want it to be at the end product. Because what's going to happen is that pretty much as soon as these cool down, they're going to tighten up a little bit and become a little bit tougher. So if we kind of slightly overshoot them, then we get them back to that like really great sweet spot. So just ever so slightly more cooked than we would want them to be. So since these are done, I'm going to turn this off and just strain them out. And they had really amazing flavor, interestingly. They, I felt like the salt really brought out the natural flavor of the lentil. We can remove that bay leaf now. And I tasted the garlic. Might be I even got like a little chunk of the garlic, I'm not really sure. But I'm just gonna like peek through here. If there's any pieces of garlic that I didn't want, we could remove it. But like I said, they were so small, they're really just gonna become a yummy bite for whoever gets that, that piece. So now the lentils can go into our dressing that we made. And if we wanted to, thank you, we could stick these into like a refrigerator if we wanted to eat it a little quicker to cool them down. Oh, one more bay leaf we'll pull out of there. But since we don't have that tonight, we'll just set them aside and let them cool off over here. And again, that dressing is just like a beautiful marinade for them. So I would love for you to see already how lovely we've got our lentils, and they smell really wonderful. Nice and firm, but they are tender. And if you get a whiff, you might notice that you get that balsamic flavor coming at you. Yeah. Oh, yes. You're not on video in this table, but there you go.
Wow.
Yeah. So honestly, like this in itself would be an amazing batch cook, just to have your lentils cooked, ready to go for the week for whenever you need them. Adding them to salads, soups, veggies, whatever meal you really wanted there. So we've got our pot hot now. Some olive oil is going in. I'm noticing that the olive oil hits the pan and does that nice little shimmer across, which shows me that it's all hot and ready. So in go our onions. And I notice also with my ears, we're using all of our senses here, there's that light sizzle, which is just what I wanted to hear. Greta did a great job in making them all sort of the same size, which I love, so they'll cook up similar time. And we also want to add, of course, our salt at this point. And the salt is going to help draw out a lot of the water and make these tender and sweet. So we go ahead and give this a stir. And this is called sweating. We're sweating the vegetables, literally because they're, with that salt, releasing their liquids, which is a really nice way to start any pot of soup. And also our colors are so beautiful automatically in there. Great. That goes there. All right, so we do have some more prep to go with this soup. So I wanted to tell you about what's going to be going in. Well, of course, we have to have some garlic. And I did this garlic in advance, actually, a few days ago, with the intention of telling you a little bit more about batch cooking and prep ideas. So we did mention last time that if you want to get more of the allicin, one of those phytochemicals, we can chop it up, wait 10 minutes, and then cook. Sometimes that doesn't work for everybody because every time you have to chop the garlic, it's more work. And so I like to offer this as sort of an alternative version. And all I did here is that I started with a whole head of garlic, and rather than just prep my garlic day by day through the week as I need it, I also really love to do this. I prep the whole head in advance, mince it up, and then I pour olive oil on top, sort of like as a preservative, and then I store it in the fridge. Pretty much anything that I would be adding garlic to, I would also be adding olive oil to, so I don't really mind the extra ingredient. And it just saves me so much time when it comes to, say, dinner, putting the soup together, or adding a little garlic to a salad dressing just to have it all set and ready. So our garlic.
So what about the benefits of it? Does it stay with the gut?
It's definitely going to decrease, and there's no question about that. We know that the phytochemicals are going to decrease over the course of the days and hours after it's cut. You're still getting nutrition out of this garlic. Won't be quite as much though.
And you said you're refrigerating
And
it too,
I'm
right?
refrigerating.
So you're preserving it a
That
little
way.
longer than if it was sitting out
Definitely.
on the shelf. Yeah.
Other things that are going to be going in, of course, are beautiful herbs. All right, so we have garlic, thyme, and rosemary that are going to be going into this. Garlic, thyme, and rosemary, and we're using the dried forms of the herbs tonight. So fresh, dry, kind of like how do you decide what to use? I really enjoy writing recipes with dried herbs as well. If we're doing a salad and we want that fresh, really bright flavor, I'm gonna prefer fresh. If you're finishing a soup and you wanna just throw in a little bit of parsley at the end to really add that enhanced flavor, fresh. Otherwise, I feel very confident in saying, like, utilize your spice drawer. Just make sure and be mindful we're working with as fresh of dried herbs and spices as we can. After about 6 months, it's time for them to move along. So if you're somebody who doesn't use their herbs and spices very frequently, I suggest buying those really small containers. That way you are making sure that you're getting the maximum phytonutrients out of these herbs and spices. So we're gonna put those in. We've got some red chili flakes for a little bit of kick. And then we're also gonna be using as a base here, one of my favorite ingredients when we're doing plant-based cooking. So this is tomato paste. And why is it so amazing for plant-based cooking, you might ask? So yes, we are definitely going to be getting that tomato red lycopene, and it's enhanced actually from canned and like jarred tomato products compared to fresh tomatoes. I have another reason, and it has to do more with flavor. So if you're used to eating meat as a way of getting a lot of flavor into your dishes, you're used to the taste of what's called umami. Umami is the savory taste. And we can get umami from more than just meat, actually. So this type of a concentrated tomato paste, mushrooms, these are going to give us that umami. We're also going to be using umami in our tofu ricotta, so something that would be cheesy. We're going to be using some umami flavors in that as well. So look out for that. We'll be getting there in a second. And I'll add the tomato paste when all of these are tender. Just kind of getting ourselves set up. Yes?
I've never seen it as a tube.
Oh, I'm such a fan of the tube. So the question is, I've never seen it as a tube, tomato paste. So how annoying is it? You have to open the jar and then you only use like a tablespoon, and then it goes bad in a week or two, right, as you cover it up. So the tomato paste in the tube is totally the answer to that. I keep it in the fridge, you just twist the cap back on and you're set.
That could be a commercial for tomato.
I know, right? No product placement. So we are also going to be prepping our kale in advance. So Greta, you're going to be working on this for us. And you all last week learned the beautiful technique called
the rip and strip.
Yep.
Yes.
Rip and strip
Yes.
works
Okay.
every time.
Okay.
So we start with just the little rip and then strip away.
Okay.
So if you need to for that, you're welcome to utilize both cutting boards.
Okay.
And then after Greta has a nice pile of these leaves, we're just gonna be chopping them into some small kind of 1-inch bite-sized strips that will go into the soup towards the end.
Okay.
We can put all the finished into our salad spinner.
Okay.
Thank you. So if I hadn't already washed the kale in advance, what we could have done is ripped and stripped, cut, salad spinner, rinse, and then spin. That's my favorite way to do it when I'm doing it at home. So I'm really just looking for all of these veggies to be nice and tender before we start adding in too much more flavor. And I would love to get a volunteer from the audience to help us out up here. Who can we have come up? You looking around? Interested? Come on up. So I'm gonna have you just peek around here, wash your hands for us, please. Thank you, thank you.
You don't want these to go in your...
The stems are gonna be
No,
compost,
right.
but
Not
not
into the-
soup.
yeah.
Thank you. Great. So as soon as, what's our volunteer's name? Gloria, our volunteer, is going to be coming up here to add in all of our herbs and spices as we go and keep us stirring. So as soon as our veggies, Gloria, have gotten nice and soft, first off, how great does that smell? Already, right? Just
Wonderful.
veggies. Love it. We're gonna add our garlic. So what we need here is a good scoop of this garlic. We're looking for about a tablespoon or so, and it goes. Great. And then I'm gonna have you immediately start stirring with our stir stick here. The garlic really only needs about 30 seconds, and we're gonna get a really strong, beautiful smell. We are going to put in our bay leaves, our thyme, rosemary, which I'll just get my measuring spoon for. Great. So we need, let's see, 1 teaspoon dried rosemary. You're gonna keep stirring for me as we go. We're gonna get all of these in there together. So 1 of dried rosemary, 2 of our oregano.
Is the water, the broth, right at the simmer?
We don't have any broth in here yet, but we will in a second. And then our oregano, that's in there, and our teaspoon of thyme.
It's still the mirepoix is what it's called, right? The
Mirepoix.
mirepoix.
Little
Yes.
pinch of red chili. Great. Oh, and immediately we have so much smells coming at us. Our tomato paste can go in. About 1 tablespoon
I
and
think that's aluminum.
2
though, the
tablespoons.
container.
Most likely.
Okay, that would worry me.
So is your can.
Yeah.
So, unfortunately, both directions. 2 tablespoons in there. Awesome. Okay, so as soon as this is kind of all mixed together, we use our veggie stock to deglaze, which is going to lift up all that flavor and get it into our soup. I have some veggie broth here. We're gonna add that in. You can keep stirring. 1 of these. Thank you, Gloria.
That's great.
It does look great. And we'll use a little bit of this one as well.
So what about the nutritional value of the dried spices? Rosemary, thyme.
So anytime that a food has been processed, even if it's just a natural processing like drying, a little bit of the nutrients are going to be lost in that process, but they are still very, very full of the phytochemicals, the dried ones. So we, in terms of like amounts that we'd want to use, if a recipe calls for dried, thank you so much, I really appreciate it. Yay, Gloria.
And I've definitely seen some, Lisa, you might know, I've definitely seen some references where dried spices actually are very potent in terms of the phytochemicals. So I do think they retain quite a bit, and maybe in some cases even get intensified a little bit through the drying process. So I think they're a pretty good option.
And flavor-wise, the ratio is about 1 to 3. So if we were going to use 3 parts of a fresh herb, we'd use 1 part of a dried herb. I'm going to cover this up to get it cooking.
That was the beans?
Those were the cannellini beans. Yes. Or white beans. I found Great Northern actually at the store tonight, but any small white bean is great. So we got to get this cooking. I'll cut some here too.
Okay.
So we're bringing that up to a boil. We'll reduce it to a simmer, and we're going to let it cook for about 10 minutes or so. I did not do the Parmesan rind. So that is another one of our umami foods to really get that savory flavor in there if you had a leftover Parmesan rind that you wanted to use up at home. Okay, so pretty much the prep for this soup is done.
Do you have a compost bag?
Let's
Or
use
do you
this
want
one
to use
now.
this bowl? Okay.
That's great. Thank you so much. All right, prep for this is done, and now we get to make some Moroccan carrot salad.
Okay.
You can rinse these too if you don't mind.
Yeah, sure.
Thanks. All right.
Question about bay leaves.
Bay leaf question. Let's hear it.
Well, we got a good test to see what bay leaves taste like if they are, if they're put in something or not. I mean, I really don't like bay leaves.
If you don't like bay leaves, you are more than welcome to leave them out of this recipe. Certainly any.
I don't like the, that much really know if I ever tasted it.
Yeah. It's a great question. I would experiment. You're going to try it tonight, see how the flavor worked for you. And if you felt like you didn't notice it and it enhanced it, then you're good to go. I'd love a time count. How are we doing?
5:56.
5:56. All right. So Moroccan carrot chickpea salad. It's going to come together really fast as soon as we make our dressing. And the star of this dressing is the spice blend that I made at home and brought in. It's all written in your recipe packets. We're gonna you can pass this around and smell, because I really want you to notice how wonderful that is. So in there we have things like cumin, coriander, caraway seeds, there is a little bit of cinnamon, red pepper flakes, and that's this gonna be the base of the harissa dressing that we're making.
So you already mixed it.
So in there, yes, just for the sake of ease in the class, there's already the cumin, coriander, caraway seeds, red pepper flakes, paprika, and cinnamon. So now we just have to kind of stir the rest of this dressing together. So that's going to be our fat coming from olive oil again. We are going to have our sweetness coming from orange juice. So I juiced some oranges. We're going to do about 1/2 cup.
What is that?
This is orange juice in a just reused jar. I really love to save glass jars when I've finished with the food inside of them, because they make such great food storage without the plastic. So love that in there. The jar is making its way around. Everyone's smelling. What are you noticing about that delicious blend?
Knocks you out.
Knocks you out. All right, I like it. Lots of really good flavor in there, and that's going to carry through.
Does that have a name, all those spices specifically?
So it's my version of a harissa spice blend.
What about using the seeds, cumin seeds?
Cumin seeds, you could use cumin seeds, but then I've already put in whole coriander seeds. So I would perhaps think that it might be a little bit too seedy. I liked the ground for this. You could start with the whole and grind them yourself too if you wanted to. But you might notice on the recipe, the coriander, or the caraway seeds, I asked to be toasted. So anytime you're starting with a whole herb or seed that's dried, toasting it is going to really bring out the flavors and make it more aromatic, more flavorful. So lemon juice going in there. I needed about a 1/4 cup. Usually that's about 1 lemon for a 1/4 cup. I'm going to err on the side of a little bit more lemon juice just for that extra acid.
It's good.
It's good.
It smells really
oh,
good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yum.
Yes.
Yum, 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 yum. So that can go right in there.
How much?
All of it.
All of
it.
it?
Yes,
Wow.
we're using it all.
Okay.
And then we have our garlic as well.
Oh wait, there's.
And sea salt, which we'll now whisk together. All right. So we have our dressing, which we always want to taste on the food that it'll be eaten on. So this is coming up now to a simmer. I'll remove the lid. So the reason that we really want to taste it on the food that it's going to be eaten on is because it might seem bland, really, if we just tasted it on its own and then expected it to be good on the veggie. We want to make sure that it holds its own on the veggie. So I'm just going to do a dip in carrot. This is my clean fork into the dressing. And I'm looking for flavor balance, FASS. What do I taste first? I'm tasting the fat first, really. I taste the olive oil, spreading, mouthfeel. It's sweet from the orange. I think I wanted a little bit more acid, really. I'm not tasting the lemons so much. So let's do a little bit more lemon juice in there. And we'll call that a day for this dressing. So now it's just a matter of tossing everything together. Here I have shredded carrots for you. I did these in my food processor with the shredder attachment. You could also, for ease, just buy yourself the shredded carrots at the store. And we have our chickpeas as well. This is going to be an interesting, we're going to transfer to the larger bowl. Yeah, that'll be great.
So you're using canned in here, but you can also soak and then cook?
I'm so glad that you asked that question. I was waiting for it. Okay.
Can you repeat the question?
The question was, we're using canned garbanzo beans, but could
We
you
might need to stir
also
with this one.
soak them and cook? And the answer is yes. Which brings us to our beautiful lesson for tonight. Greta, I'm gonna have you sort of
Stir it up.
stirring this
Okay.
up for us. And just so you know what's going in here, that's chopped parsley and some raisins. You could also use currants. And that's some more sweetness as well, just to kind of round out the flavors.
Because we did use the whole jar of spices, remember?
We did use the whole jar of spices. Yes. All right, so this is my favorite part of the class. How do we do our dried chickpeas into our chickpeas that are ready for cooking? So we will pass these around. These are dried garbanzo beans. Buy them in bulk, very economical. I love to have these just in my pantry as part of my pantry stock. I know that I want to cook my Moroccan carrot and chickpea salad tomorrow, so it's the night before. What do? I take my garbanzo beans and I rinse them first, right? We're getting away any of that debris. And I soak them. So fresh water, I fill them up with a lot more water to cover because they're going to actually grow to about 3 times that size. So I'm going to leave the lid on since there's some water in there. We don't want to make too much of a wet mess as we pass around. And the bean needs to sit in that water for like 8 to 12 hours to fully absorb. All of this is in your handout, How to Cook Beans and Lentils. So as soon as my beans are fully soaked, I know they're fully soaked because I could use my fingers and kind of squeeze them together and they'd split apart. And inside that center of the bean, I would see the water had gone all the way through. There wasn't any dry spot in the center of that bean. So what we're gonna do is actually dump our cooking liquid. We're gonna strain it off, rinse these beans, and start with a fresh batch of water. And this is pretty key if you're someone who finds that beans give you some digestive troubles. The resistant carbohydrates can actually be taken out of that water and sent down the drain, so you're starting with some fresh water and less of those gas-forming carbohydrates. And then I also like to add my handy dandy kombu, which we'll pass around, and this is a seaweed. It's a very mineral rich seaweed that when we add to the bean cooking water, we're actually not only making the beans more digestible, but we're also adding the nutrients of that seaweed into that bean cooking water to get into the beans as well. Different beans, depending on the size, take different amounts of cooking time, and that's why you have the handouts as a reference to figure out how long your pot of beans will take. Any questions about that process of cooking beans from scratch? Which, trust me, it sounds like a lot more work at first, but once you get into the habit of it, you're gonna be such a convert. I like to cook a really big pot at once, like a whole pound of garbanzo beans. And then because I've saved all my little small jars, I create my sort of stock for myself. I freeze them. I freeze them with the bean cooking liquid in the freezable jar, and then I have them ready to go. So we're eliminating kind of that can and the aluminum if you're concerned about it, and making sure that we have all of our plant-based proteins on easy access, ready to grab.
And they taste better. So you're spilling out after 12 hours, you spill out the water and you put fresh water in?
That's correct. After you've soaked your beans, you're gonna strain them and then start with fresh water. So I'm gonna just try, see how this is going. That looks beautiful. Greta's just stirred it all up, kind of evenly distributed. So we've started again with our clean spork. You wanna try? I wanna know what you think.
I would love to.
So we are trying to, How balanced is this salad? We're thinking like, do we taste the acid? Do we taste the salt? Do we taste the sweetness?
Definitely taste the sweet. Definitely taste the sweet. I think it could use a little bit more acid and maybe a teeny touch of salt.
Great. I'm so glad you mentioned it.
Okay.
So let's do that. Let's do another bit of lemon.
Okay.
And definitely a little bit more salt to go as well. We'll stir that up and be on our way. So the soup now, it's time to sort of tend to our soup. And I'm gonna show you my favorite little trick for a bean soup. It's called the immersion blender. So we have these white beans in there that are super, super creamy when they're blended up. And by blending them, we're almost creating like a creamy base to the soup. So all that means is I'm just gonna immersion blend a couple times. And I'm noticing that we're creating a lovely consistency in this pot. Great. That's all you need, just a couple immersion blenders to go. And now that I've done my blending, we can add our kale to cook down and get all wilted in our soup. So that goes in. And this is a good tasting point, right? I always kind of want to be tasting through the cooking process and seeing how we're coming along. So we stir in our kale and try to get a little bit of that creamy base now. And I'm tasting for how's the salt level? Could we have added a little bit more herb? Let's see. All right, so it definitely needs more salt, is what I'm noticing. It's a little bland right now, so we're gonna just go a good sized pinch and let that keep cooking. All right, soup's gonna be happy in there.
Did you get all the beans, or some
No.
beans whole and some beans blended?
No, I mostly left it whole. I was really just blending enough to get that creamy base going in there.
Okay.
All right.
Do you want this mixed up?
Yes, that's
Okay.
perfect.
Is
We
that
can
ready
toss
to
that
make-
together
okay.
and we can start to plate this.
Okay.
But I just want to add our last little crunch. So again, we're batch cooking, right? We're trying to make our life easier as the week goes on. We already have food. Store this salad in one container and your toasted slivered almonds in another so that they retain their crunch. We'll add it all together for tonight so everyone
Okay.
can get a bite of almond.
And then the same with these nuts? Are they going to go in
we're
at the
going to put
end?
those nuts in.
And leave the cheese
But leave the
separate.
cheese
Okay.
separate.
Got
That
it.
should do it.
Okay.
Great. So we have one last dish to prepare. And this is a fun and funky one, not gonna lie. I've had many a convert on this dish. It's called tofu ricotta. Tofu ricotta, it sounds like an oxymoron of some sort, doesn't it? So, if we are trying to eliminate dairy for ourselves, and we like to make things like, I don't know, a lasagna, or a stuffed pasta, or kind of like a creamy dip, this can be a really wonderful base food to add in. So what I'm working here with is a firm, sprouted soy tofu. I like this one from Wildwood. And this is just gonna be a dump and blend, taste and blend process. We're trying to create an umami, cheesy flavor. What does ricotta taste like? Volunteer. What kind of flavor do we have going in ricotta cheese? Salty, salty, great. What else? Yeah, definitely creamy. What about a little sweet and also a little sour? So we're playing and creating all of those with these ingredients. So we are going to put some nutritional yeast, about 2 tablespoons. Nutritional yeast, if you're not familiar with it, is a really rich source of B vitamins actually, and it has kind of like a cheesy taste of its own. We're going to be using chickpea miso. So fermented foods also are going to give us that umami flavor. I love this chickpea miso from Miso Master. And so it's a fermented food. We're getting the probiotics from that, and we're going to put in 1 tablespoon. Miso is salty, right, as well. So we're getting that component. Now, how do we get our sour? The lemon. We got our lemon. So we need about 3 tablespoons. I'm going to try and eyeball this. It's probably going to be a full lemon, but I'll start with a half and maybe a quarter.
The lemon for the compost or the garbage?
Compost.
And Carly, do you find so if you're cooking for somebody maybe that has, say, they're sensitive to acids, like they have, maybe their mouth is sensitive or their stomach is sensitive, that you can just change the amount of the recipe. I mean, it might change the flavor for them, but it might help it to be a little bit more palatable.
If lemon is too strong for mouth sores or something like that, sure, yeah, leave it out, start with just a little bit and go up until where you feel comfortable.
Okay. Yeah.
Carly, when you used almond, did you use sliced slivered almonds?
Yes, sliced slivered almonds went into our carrot chickpea salad. So I just added our salt for our saltiness of the ricotta. And lastly, we need some garlic. About 1 clove, which if you're using sort of our chopped up, it's about a teaspoon.
I think it needs a little more stirring.
Yeah, thanks. Lemons with lime is the question for this dish. I find that the lemon complements the ricotta a little bit nicer than the lime does, but please feel free to play around with it. There's no reason why you couldn't try it. So we've got tofu, miso paste, lemon, salt. Oh, I gotta get the nutmeg in there, nutritional yeast, and garlic. And the reason I'm putting a little bit of the nutritional yeast, ricotta cheese doesn't have nutritional yeast, but a lot of the recipes that use ricotta do. Like when you're making a lasagna, for instance, there's a little bit of nutmeg that goes in there. Now I need another volunteer. This is a fun one, you're tasting. You wanna come up? Yeah, I saw you looking there. So I'm just gonna blend and let this go. Do its thing. And we need 2 tasting spoons over here. To figure out if we have gotten it just right. Let's see. Looking for the spatula. Does that get?
The spatula that we are using.
Oh,
over here?
yes, it's that one. Okay, that's fine. We'll use this one.
Yeah, okay.
All right, so there's a little bit stuck to the side, so we'll first just get that kind of scraped in and simultaneously take our first taste.
Strong smell.
Strong smell. What are you smelling?
It's sort of pungent.
Pungent. Okay, great. So we are tasting for our fasts. What do you notice? What comes up first for you? Well, first off, do we like it?
Good, yeah.
It's pretty good.
It's really good.
Yeah, it's pretty good. It doesn't need a ton, but it could use
A
a little something. We're not sure what.
maybe a little more.
It's a little
of the-
flat right now,
yeah,
right?
A little more of the acid.
You got it. Exactly. So that ricotta cheese, it has that tanginess, that acidity to it. So we do need more lemon. It also needs a touch more salt. So we have two choices. Thank you. We could either add miso or we could add sea salt. Any preference? If you were in the kitchen, what would you do?
Well, I probably use salt, but I don't know if that's a good thing.
Let's try the miso. Miso does still have sodium in it, so it's not like we're completely avoiding the salt by adding this, but we're gonna also get that yummy umami flavor from this where the sea salt wouldn't give us that. So we'll try a little bit more miso in there.
This one's ready too.
How long does miso last in the refrigerator?
Really long time, like months,
I'll follow
months,
behind
months.
But not years.
Oh, can you
I use
repeat-
mine faster than
Can you
that.
repeat the question, Carly?
Thank you.
I didn't
Yes.
hear what
The
was-
question is, how long can miso sit in a fridge for?
Okay.
A long time, months. I don't think years. If it ended up having like any growth on it, obviously we'd want to toss it, but you'll use it faster than that. All right,
All right,
we're gonna see how we did.
all right. I'd probably put more nutmeg in it too.
Ooh, that could be
But
round
I'm-
3.
yeah.
Okay. So this is the mama spoon. These are our baby spoons. Mama feeds baby.
Yep.
Okay. Mmm.
Yeah.
Mmm. There we go. See, that's what I was waiting for. Mmm, we want that.
Right.
Great. Okay. So our tofu ricotta is done, and we're going to be serving it. Thank you very much for your help. We'll be serving it with some crackers, just to give you an idea of a way that we could use this. It's really yummy as just like a spread. Other things that you can, it's a base as you could add different flavors on top of it. So for instance, if we had some basil in the summer, we could put a little basil in there and make a nice dip. I mentioned using it as a layer in a lasagna or with pastas. Really versatile. I'm excited for you to taste it.
So like an Alfredo pasta? Is it like gravy?
It's not really Alfredo-y in that it's not so loose, right? Like as watery consistency. You could loosen it. You could add some maybe vegetable stock or just water and loosen it up. I'd be curious if you tried that, Gloria, and played around. I want to know how it turns out. So our soup is our last thing. And again, we're really just coaxing it at this point. We want all the flavors to come together in a really balanced way. And so I want to just see how it all tastes. So it's really lovely. It's very, I can taste all the herbs in there. I can taste that tomato concentrate base, but it needs that lift, that sort of high note. So in the recipe, I gave you the option of adding some lemon. I also really love a splash of vinegar in this dish. We could use balsamic as well. So let's do the lemon just for tonight, since I already have one open and cut. And I think that's just gonna be that missing kind of zing to bring this soup together. We have sweetness from the carrots and that onion that really kind of melded together. I get that like steam bath every time I put my face over. Cooking, it's good for the skin. One more taste and I think we'll be there. Really delicious. I'm excited for you all to try. So I'm gonna just turn it off. We're gonna serve it up. And on one last note, I just wanna mention the fast. Let's just say I was like a little heavy-handed with the salt. It happens sometimes, right? Our fast is this guiding principle that allows us to sort of like balance a dish just in case we've sort of tipped it a little too far in one direction. I like to think of it as two sides of a seesaw. So salt and acid work like this. So if I added too much salt, I could add a little bit of extra acid. If there was too much acid, a little bit of extra salt. And of course, sweetness to round it out, or the fat to round it out. All right.
Are you ready to serve up the spoon or
Pretty
the soup?
close. I'm thinking that what I'd love for everyone to do while we're finishing is to turn to your action plan. So you all have that handout tonight of your action plan. This is for you to take home as a reflective tool about what you are getting out of our class here. Tidbits that you feel like you want to capture and remember as the weeks pass. So I'll let you start filling that out. We're gonna serve up your soup.
Okay.
And start passing out the food as well.
Serving up the soup. So do we have a little ladle or? Okay.
I think that should be perfect. Okay. Do you want me to bring it over there?
I'm sure.
Okay. It's quite hot.
Okay.
And then I think we'll set up the feta with a little spoon.
Okay.
I can do that.
Can you pass a spoon, Lisa? Thank you. There you go.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay.
Alrighty.
There's that. Okay. How many people do we have?
So actually, I'll just take hands. How many people would like feta? Feta cheese. Hands up for feta crumbles on your salad. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Oh, let's do it the other way. Who doesn't want feta? Who doesn't want feta cheese? No one doesn't want feta. Okay, feta's going on them all. Great, we'll do that then. So you'll fill out your action plans. We'll finish these up.
And
So, you know, on the feta note, the goat cheese, sheep, or don't have the saturated fat that
they have a little less. They still have some saturated fat, but they do tend to have a few grams less than a cow cheese.
and then it can be either sheep or goat.
They tend to be lower.
That might
Yeah.
be feta.
Feta can be either way, either.
Yes, this is a cow's feta. You can find sheep or goat as well. And if you're having trouble digesting cow's milk, sometimes the sheep or the goat can be a little bit more tolerable.
And then, Carly,
Yes.
can you just review what the action plan is? Because I love that aspect of the class, and I just wanted to hear about it again a little bit more.
Yes, thanks. So what is the action plan and how are we utilizing it? The action plan is for you to just kind of try and capture what we've covered here tonight and set some goals for yourself. So you're just something to be accountable for your own growth in this culinary food nutrition journey. And while we're finishing this up, can answer some more questions. Yes.
So I've always heard a lot of things about plant-based proteins and complete proteins, like beans and rice made of complete protein. Do legumes themselves, like, so all these recipes, is that a complete protein?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we get a complete protein when we combine our proteins, but the plant-based proteins don't have to be combined all in the same meal. It's really over the course of a day of eating. And so you get the complete protein when you mix the grain with the bean or the lentil.
And so basically, what each bean, each pulse or grain is missing one of the essential amino acids, and when you eat different combinations of beans and grains, then your body has a pool of all those essential amino acids, and they can kind of combine together without us having to eat them in the same meal. So,
Perfect. More questions? Yes.
So what was in the food processor? It looked like just ricotta cheese?
What was in the food processor? Turn to your recipe packet and look at the tofu ricotta. To make the tofu ricotta, we put all those ingredients into the food processor, and they're all listed on there for you.
And so
Yes.
it looks like ricotta, but
Yes.
it's tofu,
Just
right?
tofu.
So it's
Fooled
kind
ya.
of deceptive there. You're getting plant protein.
Yes.
Freezer
Yes.
Does the glass crack?
Great question. So there's different jars that are going to crack, and there's jars that are fine for the freezer. The general rule is that the bigger the jar, the more likely it is to crack, and the more frequently that you've froze and defrosted the jar, also potentially the more likely it is to crack. There's a few freezing tips that I suggest, which is that you always need to leave a really good leeway at the top of the jar, because the liquid will expand as it freezes, and that added pressure can cause the jar to crack. The other thing that I like to do is not put it into the freezer with its lid. I put it into the freezer actually uncovered, and I with that good amount of space at the top of the jar, and then come back to it in about 5-7 hours. Put the jar lid on that point. And that way I'm just preventing that extra pressure from building up during the freezing process and making it less likely for the jar to crack. Yes, we want to freeze it with the lid on for the longevity, but just to get it started in the freezer, the lid off. I really like for freezing the 2 cup, so that's a 16-ounce ball jar.
Why not plastic?
Why not plastic? When we freeze our plastic or we heat our plastic, we run the risk of those sort of chemical bonds that make up the plastic falling apart a little bit and leaching into the food. So for freezing, if we have the ability to freeze in glass, that's a wonderful one.
Have you ever grown herbs in the kitchen?
I'm sure.
Do I grow herbs in the kitchen or on the shelf?
And we can probably just start
In my
passing these
ideal
out.
world, I would just
We can
have
just
this like
pass them out.
beautiful garden right outside my kitchen window. I grow a few herbs outside on my porch.
It's hard to just go and look for them and get them.
Yes,
You can grow them
it's
right
such a
now.
fabulous thing to have herbs growing on your windowsill or in your garden. The ones that I've found are the easiest to not mess up are things like rosemary and sage, which are a little hardier. Sometimes basil is going to be a little bit more delicate and difficult to grow. In this climate, if you have outside space, parsley and cilantro do really well. And mint, of course.
So I think it's time to
Yes,
eat.
it is time
Yeah.
to eat. All right, everybody.
Looks delicious. There's so much color in this.
Thank you all. We're going to. There is so much color. I feel like we need, yes, beautiful, beautiful, beautiful.